So, Berto, we did a deep dive on the Menendez brothers and we asked for follow-up emails and we got a few. So let's read those and respond. What do you say?
I think it sounds great.
This is the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and I'm also a professor.
My name is Humberto Castañeda and I am a calligraphy deconstructionist. See, I can't even say my job title sometimes.
You almost said a calligraphy deconstructionist.
Deconstructionist was what I used to call myself.
I see. So patron Maya from San Francisco, she says, "Hi, I think Berto did an incredible job slowly unraveling the details of the Menendez story.
Yay.
I wanted to see what you guys think life on the outside would be like if the Menendez brothers are released." So here's the first question, Berto. Would either of them be able to get a job?
Yes.
Elaborate?
Depends what we define as jobs, but as long as it's something that pays the money, yeah, absolutely. First of all, in today's world, they could be any number of influencing capacities, right? Like they could do podcasts, they could do YouTube channels, whether with or without the haters, like people could hate them and whatever, they could still do that. Second, I could see them being contributors on channels for like legal contributors or whatever, and again,
it'd be hard to make money doing that though, as someone who is a contributor on those things, they often don't pay
that might be fair. Yeah.
Or they barely pay.
Then they also could write books about their experiences, probably right. As long as they don't say anything about the victims or something. I don't know. Whatever.
Well, that's a good question. Yeah.
I guess their victims are their parents.
Yeah.
It's weird, right? It's like, but anyways, I'm thinking they could definitely make money. Now, as far as like, could they go and apply? Yes, there are a lot of businesses that I think would turn their resume away just because they probably don't want the maelstrom that comes with it.
But if they're just like a regular person at a regular job, right? That isn't public facing, like
right.
They're a bookkeeper for a business or something,
Well, and legally they shouldn't be able to discriminate against them if they've been, properly released.
Well, and a lot of people have a lot of sympathy, so I could see it going either way. In fact, I would imagine most people would have tremendous sympathy for them, and they serve their time.
That's
and
right.
Do you think that they're going to kill the boss or something?
Yeah.
So I think we should absolutely acknowledge that on average, there's a lot of discrimination against people who were incarcerated. People, if they have 2 or 3 resumes and one resume is someone who was incarcerated, a lot of people, even though they might not admit it, that would put that one aside because, well, who knows? I mean, even if it's a low risk that they're going to fly off the handle and kill someone at my work, I don't want that worry. And so anywhere from there to full on, misinformation that once a criminal, always a criminal kind of thing.
Right.
So, I think it would. I think another opportunity for people like this is the speaking circuit. Mm-hmm. You can give speeches, like conventions and other kind of professional organization meetings. I always have like keynote speakers, right. And it's kind of interesting, like the industry and the economy of that kind of occupation. Of people like Monica Lewinsky and other kinds of people, and maybe deservedly so, that the way that it seems to me when I have attended these things is that when you go to a professional organization get-together and you can walk away saying a famous person, like Monica Lewinsky or someone, or one of the Menendez brothers gave a talk, even if the talk isn't like fantastic.
Right. It adds cachet to the thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you're Menendez brothers, you could absolutely cobble together various different talks, whether it's inspirational or transformational or media savvy or
survival
trauma, right? Trauma.
Exactly,
so there's all sorts of inspirational or informational types of, or apologizing.
Yeah.
Or,
the thing I would personally, so like if I was hiring, let's say I was hiring and I got their resumes, and depending what the job is, of course, like if I'm trying to find survivors of abuse that spend time in jail and are famous, and I need these kinds of applicants, well then of course. But if it's more like I have a quote unquote normal business and I get their resumes across my desk, the thing that might worry me if I know their background is more about like, well, I don't know what kind of experience they might have because they have been in jail since they were kids. And so I don't, that'd be kind of the thing. Plus, I might be concerned about not so much that they might murder someone or something, just more about what the trauma of their experience might do to their ability. Again, it's probably not fair for me to discriminate on that. I'm just saying like what would literally go through my head if those resumes come through my desk.
Well, from my understanding, they did a lot of things in prison that were job skills related, I suppose. Yeah. They could also teach tennis, now that I think about it.
That's true. They were both really good.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I could also see them opening like a restaurant or something.
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, that's where it would be just like, okay, our name is famous, so
right.
Come to Menendez and Bros.
Right. What sort of business would it be?
Well, it'd be California cuisine for sure, and it'd be,
you could lean into the
Tex-Mex.
The preppy Beverly Hills. Mm-hmm. You of course wouldn't want anything on the menu like the kill your parents burger or anything.
No, but like I would freeze the early 90s, like late 80s, early 90s. I would freeze that in time in their
totally. I mean, you could see that like having those sort of stereos that you would take out of your car. Remember that? I feel like younger people, if you told them what we used to do with our car stereos,
it wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, they'd be like, why did you do that? Another question from patron Maya from San Francisco. She says, do you think they'd continue living together? Well, they don't really live together now, right? They're in different prisons.
But I mean, I think the good question is, given that they were so separated for so many years and they cared for each other so much, would they actually make a choice to live at the very least very close? I would imagine they would at least want to live close by. But there's also some very complex dynamics between them, right?
Yeah. I wonder what their relationship is like.
Yeah.
Do they ride each other a lot? I'm sure they have some fond feelings towards each other, but by this point, 30 years later, they could be quite distant.
One thing I didn't cover enough in our deep dive is there was this long period of time where they were separated in different prisons, and they weren't allowed to see each other at all. And it was many, many years. I forget how long. And then there was a moment where they were allowed to see each other. They were brought to the same prison or something. They were allowed to see each other. And it was a huge breakdown into tears kind of thing for them. But, that doesn't mean you can live together successfully with someone. It just means that they missed each other a lot. Yeah.
I would imagine that they would want to be close the way that you would be with your brother, but not necessarily overlapping in your life. They probably just want to each have their own life. Last question. I believe one or both of them got married from within prison. Can you speak about that? End of email. I actually looked up the details. Do you know anything about this?
I forget. I know that there was the first girlfriend that Lyle had, that broke up, but then I know he had a second one that they met while he was in jail, and then I think that became something, but I don't remember the details.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So Lyle got married in 1996 to Anna Erickson. She was a model, and then she was something else after that. But she wrote him letters after watching his trial on TV, and then they got married after letters correspondence, I think, and maybe some conjugal visits or something.
I don't think they were allowed conjugal visits from what I remember in the...
Yeah.
So I think they might have just gotten married just based on the texts.
the letters.
The letters, yeah.
Meaning that, conjugal or not, but we don't even know if they met in person.
I'm sure,
it would have been. It would have been.
Visits are one thing, just not conjugal.
Yeah, you would hope that they would have some face-to-face or something, but their wedding was actually over the phone, which kind of lends itself to the idea that maybe they hadn't met in person, and maybe they only could meet in person after they were married.
I don't know about that. All I know is that I remember explicitly when I was going through all the materials, they explicitly called out that conjugal visits were not allowed.
And this is early. And Lyle's the older one.
Yeah.
And so Lyle got married to Anna the day he was sentenced. So
he was like 26,
so
27.
This would have happened fairly quickly on the timeline, on the grand scheme. They got divorced 5 years later, reportedly after she discovered he had been writing other women.
Oh.
So cheating, I guess, is the way you would look at that, which, emotional cheating, but still. Then he got married 2 years later to Rebecca Sneed, a magazine journalist and later an attorney. They met again through prison correspondence. Presumably, she reached out to him because I would have a hard time imagining. Well, I don't know. Maybe Lyle reached out to her. No. And then they had been separated by the end of last year, 2024. Rebecca Sneed publicly shared that they have been separated, quote unquote, for a while now, although they do remain close and committed to advocating for their brother's release. So, separated is a funny word when you've never been actually together, right?
Yeah.
But I guess it's emotionally separated.
Right. That is very interesting. I could see that in a relationship that starts in person, but then they have, for work or for whatever reason, their relationship becomes a long distance relationship. And then at that point, they might say, let's separate. And they're still separated by distance, but now they're actually like not talking or whatever. But in this case, there was never even that initial phase where they were...
Well, and if it's a long-distance relationship, presumably there are times when you're living together for a week or something here or there. And because now sometimes they let people like this out for a week or something with an ankle monitor or something, but I
don't think they would
I don't think so, yeah. Eric, the younger brother, he married Tammy Ruth Sockelman in 1999, so also pretty early. She saw him in a documentary and wrote to him. Their relationship developed over years of communication, and reportedly their wedding cake was a Twinkie because they got married. So what Maya
it wasn't in the shape of a Twinkie. It was a Twinkie.
An actual Twinkie.
Okay.
Because they get married in prison and you can't bring stuff in because there could be a gun in the cake or something. So you have to get something from the vending machine, I assume,
Right.
So, Berto, why would someone marry someone? This happens all the time.
Yeah.
Charlie Manson.
Ted Bundy.
These. Why would someone do this?
Well, okay, so I guess there's a couple different aspects here. One is, why would someone be okay with physical separation and yet establish a serious, committed relationship? That's a great question. I mean, for me personally, I find that very difficult to imagine. It's not as difficult to imagine once I have, like let's say with my wife, if we had to be separated for some reason. Of course, I'm not going to be like, well, that's that. See ya.
But if you're on Tinder and you come across someone that is permanently behind bars, are you swiping right or left?
Right, exactly. So in my case, I can't relate to it. But if I'm trying to put myself in other people's shoes, and at first I'm going to tackle this not from the perspective of there's something maybe difficult about them. Maybe they were also abused, or I'm just going to put all that aside and say, what legitimately might I feel that would make me think? So there's a few things. One, I could come across someone whose life story seems so interesting and compelling. Maybe we have similar interests or something. Let's say that I was swiping right and I see Eric and I'm like, oh my gosh, I also was pushed to be a tennis pro by my father, and it was horrible, and that we have that in common. And
I guess it's kind of broadcasting a version of your personality, right? The documentaries and the TV coverage. There's a wide net that's being cast in terms of like, if we just look at the surface level, I wonder if me and that person might hit it off, So there's that factor.
That already happens with any celebrity, right? Like a lot of people, myself included, think of certain celebrities and think, oh man, I would be great with that person just because of what you think you know about them, right? So I can understand that from their perspective. And from the perspective of the incarcerated person, well, it's not like they have a lot of other things going, right? So it's like, might as well get a relationship going with someone. That said, there is another part of this which is a little darker, especially when we saw it with, like the Ted Bundys and other Jeffrey Dahmers and things, which is a fascination with the acts themselves. Like, oh, these people are murderers. These people are serial killers. And that could be anything from they are intrigued or they're fascinated by the macabre or they literally, I don't know, worship the fact that they can kill people or something. That to me seems more troubling because,
Although, as long as it's not harming anyone, it's an innocent manifestation of a fucked up impulse,
Maybe. I kind of... Yeah, maybe. I just think it's like, oh, that seems like the kind of person that was going to follow Charles Manson into a downward spiral of death.
Well, okay, so some other factors, and those are good. One is just celebrity fascination.
Yeah.
Nothing makes someone more attractive than being a celebrity. All you have to do is look at Christy Brinkley and Billy Joel for that one.
Hey, he writes great songs.
Case in point. Also, wanting attention is another possible factor.
Yeah.
I'm not accusing the individuals with Lyle and Eric of this. I'm just saying these are the factors that we often will assess for, I suppose, if we were asked to do so. But, people will do a lot for attention, do a lot for fame, because you're instantly famous.
Yeah.
And if you are appealing to this very famous person, then,
That's a great point. I didn't think of that. The fact that no matter what, if you're, well, especially the more that they're still in the news or whatever, you're likely going to end up in the news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you will have a Wikipedia entry.
Right. And so if that's what it's driving you, it's like, yeah.
And if you wanted to parlay that into an Instagram following and
or a book,
an influencer
How
status,
I Married a Murderer,
then, you got that going for you. Another factor is rescue fantasy.
Oh, sure.
Given that some adults had a childhood role of being forced to rescue people or being loved because they rescued people, then as an adult they might seek an underfunctioner to rescue.
So I've literally suffered from this or been this with guys, and I think it was a result of me, having to deal with a father who had, things where I felt like I needed to try to rescue him, right? And then later in life, feeling like, oh, I need to rescue this person, this guy friend, or this random stranger who seems to be in trouble, and I feel like I need to rescue them.
Yeah, the most stark example of this was when you you took in a homeless guy.
That's right.
Who you were. From my memory, it was a very altruistic and, not wrong-headed impulse, really.
Well, it was the way I did it, in retrospect, was very dangerous to me. Yeah. But at the time, I don't know why I've always, and I talked with my therapist about this at one point, is I sometimes view the world in a very kind of safe way, or like I should be able to deal with anything that the world throws at me. And not maybe taking into account the real risks that I might be incurring. And that was one of those cases where I could have still tried to help that person, but in that time, I actually let them move into an empty room in my place, and for free, because I was like helping them, and like that could have led to any.
Well, and you're also married.
I was married at the time, but even if I were alone, or maybe
you're still married. The way you said it,
I'm saying that like that could have led to, slit throats in the middle of the night, or break-ins, or
not likely, right?
Well,
but
knowing what kind of friends that person had.
Yeah,
I actually did kind of dodge if not a bullet, I dodged a break-in.
Right, burglary. Was
Yeah.
much more likely.
Yeah.
For meth money.
The person themselves, they were, I think, really trying, but they were surrounded by some horrible quote friends.
But he ended up not, lasting very long. You were gonna give. How did you meet him? Did you meet him on the street?
Yeah. So the story was, it was one of those late Seattle nights. I was drunk and I had left the club and I was walking by myself, and in an example of not understanding that the world isn't always safe, I just went up to a group of what looked to be like street people and just started talking to them. And
this is like 15 years ago-ish, or 20 years ago.
It was 2008.
Okay. Oh,
yeah.
17 years ago.
Yeah. So then I went up and I was like, oh, blah, blah. And then I'm just asking them questions. What do you do? Like, blah. And then I'm like, you're homeless? And this person was 17. I'm like, oh my God, that's crazy. And so then I said, okay, listen, if you want to try to do something about your life, give me a call. And then I gave him my phone number. And then I think about maybe 2 weeks or a month later, I got a call or a text or something saying, hey, I want to do something about my life or something. So I'm like, all right. So I'm like, okay, meet me at the, the downtown, the Cheesecake Factory. Meet me at the Cheesecake. So we went, we had lunch. And I was like, all right, what's going on? And I found out, well, they had been kicked out of their house because dad found marijuana or something. And they were homeless. And I'm like, okay, well, why can't you? You're young, you're fit, you're not like hurting. So why don't you try to get a job? Well, I can't. Why not? Well, I don't have a social security. like, oh, what? Of course you have a social security number. Well, I don't have a license. But okay, but you can get all those things. Like, no, my dad said I can't. So he had been fed a whole bunch of false information. So I helped him get a license, get his social security number, all these things, and get a job, and then the idea, eventually he moved out of my place and started renting a place. But unfortunately, he was surrounded by people that were criminals, and eventually he just got back to drugs and left his job, and I don't know what ended up happening after that. But it was unfortunate. Yeah.
You know more of the details, obviously, than I do, but you're framing it as people around him when he might have had trauma that resulted in an
undoubtedly.
addiction.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not just saying like they forced him or something. I'm just saying that like I feel like left in a little vacuum, he might have had a better of a chance. But I know directly because what he would say is he would tell me, well, my friend such and such said this to me. And it was like horrible misinformation, horrible like lies about what's possible and not possible, what he should do and all these things. And I was like, but clearly there was a point at which he was no longer like listening to me. So I'm like, okay. Well.
And he lived with you for like a month or something?
A little longer than that, but then he moved out. Maybe it was 3 months.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a nice thing that you did, and it could have worked. And maybe it did. Maybe it planted a seed, those 3 months might have helped him to...
I don't necessarily regret a lot of it. Like, I don't regret trying to help him get his license and he did. He got his license, his social security number, get a job, all this. I do retroactively would not have invited him into my home.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was...
Yeah, I have a similar naivete, optimistic hope, and a belief in the goodness of other people, and also in just life working out or something, as most poignantly evidenced by the time I pogoed off my own head, crashing my bike. At no point did I think, maybe I should not go on this obstacle course with this electric bike that is not designed for that kind of thing,
Like, what's the opposite of a light bulb? It's a a short circuit.
Yeah. Another factor that we sometimes point to explain why someone would marry someone in prison is idealization. So when we first date someone, we will often fall in love and idealize them because we haven't seen the dark side of them or the bad side of them, because we haven't spent much time with them. And so they seem perfect to us. And marrying someone in prison, you're permanently in the dating zone, essentially.
That's a really good point, because you're not actually, unless the texting or writing or whatever turns dark, but you're right. You're not spending the actual time where your dishes are dirty, or where they took your car without asking, or they ran over your dog and buried it in the yard and never told you, and all those things.
For example.
Yeah.
Another is that it's a controlled, intimate context, that it's safer for people that might need that based on past traumas, right? And it might be perceived that it's harder for that person in prison to cheat or leave you, right? They seem like, well, even if it's not a conscious thought, it's like they're a safer bet. It's sort of like how some people will date involved people that are married, for example.
Oh, I see. Because there's a barrier there.
There's a barrier there, and there's an inherent lack of risk because you're not fully involved, so it's kind of like that.
That's interesting.
Another more darker reason is that people that want to control their spouse, because you can have the upper hand if you're the person that is outside prison, right? Because you're free to move, you're free to come and go. You can choose not to see them. They can't, if you go to see, they can refuse to see you, but they can't come to you. Yeah. And you can hang a lot of things over their head.
It's a huge imbalance.
Yeah,
wow.
It's a lot of imbalance of power.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying anything about Lyle and Eric's
No.
partners.
Just in general. That would always be an imbalance.
Another just blanket or broad term is just past traumas that could lead to someone seeking someone to recreate a past relationship, for various reasons. If they had an abusive parent or even a parent who killed someone,
Right.
as an effort to recreate that, to have it work out differently this time, you could seek someone that's incarcerated.
By the way, in the part about like the barrier, or sorry, the imbalance of power, it also occurs to me that you would know more, of course, but in a lot of the 90-Day Fiancé type scenarios, there's often an imbalance of power too, even though it's not an incarceration thing, but it is like, hey, I hold your future in this country in my hands.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of parallels. I hadn't thought about that. The idealization, because they're often forced to date in this very surface way, and it often is the case that once they start to actually live in the same house or the same town,
Right.
all of a sudden they hate each other.
Right.
Because it was all sweet nothings
Sure.
and lovey-dovey because it was 15 minutes a day on Zoom every day,
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break. Get back. More emails about the Menendez Brothers deep dive. What do you say, Bruno?
Let's do it.
All right, we're back from the break. This next email is from patron Miriam. She says, "Hey, Dr. Hanna and Humberto, thank you for covering this case. What struck me most was the generational aspect of the abuse in both families." So Miriam basically writes a lot of details, but basically what she's saying is that Kitty, the mom,
Right.
her sister said that her father sexually abused their brother. So Kitty's brother may have been sexually abused by Kitty's father. Going on here. When Lyle testified about the abuse, he mentioned that his father told him stories about sexual relationships between soldiers and athletes and referenced Greek mythology. You mentioned this, Berto.
Yep.
He even gave him texts to read about it. More disturbingly, he told Lyle, who are we talking about?
The dad.
Oh, the dad. More disturbingly, the dad told Lyle this was a tradition in their family, something that happened between fathers and their firstborn sons, and that Lyle would one day do the same with his own son. I wonder how far this goes back. Could it have been connected to the brutality they experienced or inflicted? Okay, well, first off, before going on to that question, any thoughts on that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, even it's so interesting because there were a lot of different stories too. There were anecdotes from the family members that Kitty had been directly abused herself. There was also anecdotes that it was the mom that had abused Jose, but Lyle, directly testified about that whole story of and so who knows, was that just his excuse for doing it, or had that actually happened to him? But it's quite possible that he had been abused himself.
Yeah, given Jose's level of abuse, it seems highly likely that the father was abused or witnessed abuse. And, there are cases when that's not the case for sure.
Yep.
But it is actually one of the more disturbing aspects of cases like this that I've worked on, where you pull at that thread on the sweater and everything comes unraveled.
Yeah.
You start to just see abuse going all sorts of directions and back in time in the generations. And it's a really horrific thing to reckon with. Like a common scenario would be, I would be working with a family after it came out that someone was, maybe the mother or the father, or the older brother, the uncle or the aunt or someone, grandparent, was sexually abusing one of the kids. And then at first you hear these very light stories like, well, grandpa was being a little inappropriate.
Right. Put him on their lap.
And then you pull at that string.
Right.
And you discover the kinds of stories that you hear at the Menendez Brothers. The cinnamon and the lemon juice and the mean sex, and each thread is like, oh my God. And then you say, well, wait, did the father say that his father did this? and you know grandpa, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so you pull at that string and you hear it was even worse for the dad.
Yeah.
And you say, oh, well, what about the 3 other kids? And you ask them, you pull at that string and they're like, yeah. And then those other kids and their kids. And then the mom, you know, and the mom, you know, eventually a common scenario would be that she would say, well, you know, hearing all this and thinking about it all the time, I'm starting to think that the way that I frame my childhood is a little wrong because I just normalized the kind of stuff that my mom did to me in the bathtub.
Oh God!
And now I'm seeing in this, and it's at every Y in the road. There are massive incentives to repress and to go into denial because it's horrific to think about. You know, and that's why these things get suppressed in families.
Absolutely. I've had those thoughts about what happened to me when I was 5 because the babysitter who was 12, there were 2 of us, for example. So it wasn't just me who was being abused. At the very least, there were 2 of us, and it's possible there were others, right? And I've often thought, oh, I'm pretty sure she was being abused because her knowledge and intention at 12 doesn't compute exactly. Maybe she found a weird book and went bananas, but I don't think so, right? So then there's that story, like you're saying, and if you pull at that thread, what are you going to find? And I've thought about that, how horrible it is that there's all these secrets hiding in plain sight, affecting so many people's lives and ruining their psyches and causing all this stress and damage to other generations. And
that people would rather kill themselves or kill other people than pull on that string.
Yeah.
Question from Miriam. She says, could it have been connected to the brutality they experienced or inflicted as colonizers? Do you know what this question is getting at?
As colonizers.
I think she's saying that Jose's lineage is with the Spanish colonizers.
I see what you're saying. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, okay. So from that angle...
So trying to... Because again, you pull at the string, and then you think, well, Jose's dad. Well, then you think Jose's grandfather.
So this is a thing that we were discussing in the other episode, actually. Most of the initial waves that came to the Americas from Spain to the so-called, get ready to be upset, New World. I triggered you. No, but a lot of those waves from Spain were not healthy, like God-fearing family members that just wanted to have no, they were in many cases criminals or at the very least vicious soldiers. And they came and they took everything. And so, yeah, you could imagine an immediate lineage of abuse started.
Yeah.
Let alone if some of them were on top of just doing the normal raping and pillaging, were also psychopaths, which there might have been quite a few of them that volunteered to go around, because, I'm like, hell, should I go on this trip, into the nothingness? Or should I stay here with all the things that I value and all the life that I value? Oh, yeah, I'll go into the nothingness.
Yeah, it's something that we don't think about.
Yeah.
That the people of the 1700s would be motivated by the same things that we see today.
Yeah.
We know that there are pedophiles from around the world that flock to Southeast Asia, for example, certain towns or red light districts that look the other way, or there's no oversight, or there's no regulations that will protect children. And so there are migrations, if you will, to areas because people know or they've heard. And so it's hard for us to see that because that's not what's depicted in the period pieces, the Shakespeare kind of stuff that we see. We don't usually see some creep that's just like, ha ha ha, I hear that there are little kitties on the Polynesian islands that I can go rape, but you would absolutely imagine that would be the case.
Yep. So yeah, it's I could see that. So that's an interesting question. I had not considered that angle. That's very interesting.
Another question, or did it originate in Spain, possibly even contributing to Jose leaving the country when he was 15 years old?
Well, she means Cuba.
Yeah. So could it have originated in Cuba?
Yeah. I mean, all those countries where there was there was a lot of
might-
abusive practices.
Might Jose have left because of that? But there's so many other reasons why people left.
Well,
back then.
the state, yeah, you're right, and who knows? But the stated reasons were literally that they lost all their stuff as a result of the revolution, and they sent him to the States. But maybe he also saw it as an escape. Who knows?
Right. All right, let's take another break. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right, back from the break. Annual patron Sarah from Italy. She says, I really love the Menendez Brothers deep dive, but please do follow-ups. There's a lot more information. For example, the Dramatization Monsters, the miniseries on Netflix 2024. Sarah says, a lot of that show is not factual. Just chiming in. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, I watched it. It's really good, but they also filled in the blanks. I mean, to be fair,
They filled in all the blanks because they only were going off of the accounts. So.
Right, and what to be fair though, we also don't know what didn't happen, right? I mean, that's not a great way to put it because when you're making a show, you're taking a stance on what each scene is, right? So granted, more likely than not, there's tons of stuff that's wrong, but at the same time, it wasn't all just invented out of thin air. Like everything at least everything I saw in that show, I could trace to some account from some relative or some, thing.
A reasonable extrapolation on the data. Yeah. Except there was one detail that...
The shower scene?
Something, right?
Yeah, so there was a shower scene where the two brothers are having a sexual encounter and the mom walks in on them. Actually, that's probably not the only... To be fair, I'm sure there were more scenes, not remembering every single detail. But that one in particular was called out as like, well, why'd you add that? Like, that's ridiculous.
Right.
And that's fair because the Menendez brothers did admit that there was abuse when he was younger, but they didn't say like, and we were having an active homosexual relationship, right?
Right. The kinds of things that they might embellish on, like when I watched it as well, there's an initial scene when the two brothers are talking, and it's when Eric, the younger one, is starting to burst at the seams regarding the traumas that and the emotional struggles, and is alluding to it, and then the older brother is caring and loving, but also telling him like, you got to keep that under wraps.
Right.
You've got to turn that into anger or something because that can't come out, Right. And that scene was pretty specific and was, extrapolating on data, but also there were things that they were depicting and saying essentially about their relationship and the way that it was that was extremely speculative.
Sure.
Now, you've got to cut some corners at some point because
it's a dramatization. So we can point to any Ted Bundy or Dahmer or any.
But my point is that extrapolation is, I think, more understandable than having the two of them in a shower. Having them in a shower together as young men is salacious. Yeah, the only reason why you're doing that is because you want to create a splash with your stupid TV show.
That I can totally agree with.
Yeah.
Because that first of all, it didn't like sort of add any information that was pertinent to why they would kill their parents, right?
Right.
And there was zero accounts or evidence that was going on.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if there were, then okay, but there weren't. So why would you just invent that? Going on. Also, Sarah says, the Menendez Brothers podcast, some actual direct information from the brothers on the lead up to the murder. Eric says he believes to this day that his father was about to kill him. What do you think about that one?
Well, they stated that they actually never... Well, this is kind of funny to say because they did, as a way to like close the book on their story, so that they would essentially be eligible for even being reconsidered in their sentencing. They did take full responsibility, and they said they don't blame anyone, and they killed their parents. End of story. Right. Now, at the same time, they didn't say and the abuse didn't happen. Right. Like they never recanted that. But from the start and throughout the trial, they did claim that they had that fear. And given that they both testified that they had confronted the father about the ongoing abuse and that they were going to talk about it and that the father was getting concerned about the therapist, and knowing what they knew about their father, I mean, I guess they would be naive or abuse victims to not think that their father might kill them, But, how do you know exactly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, they say Eric believed all those years that he was protecting his mother from the truth, and his world collapsed when he discovered she knew all along. So that's another detail.
Yeah. One thing that I appreciated about that dramatization, even if it's incorrect maybe, but I don't know, I have no way to know, is there is this aspect where they showed both perspectives. They showed like the last few days from the parents' perspective, and they tried to show it without, like, there was no, they didn't show scenes where the father was secretly winking at the mirror and going like, ha ha ha, I might get away with it. No, they were just like two people going about their business, and they were still acting like they were a loving couple, even though, and I like that for two reasons. One, there's this perception, because we all watch so much media, that like if there's abuse going on, then it's obvious at all times in every context, right? And then two, that there's only one side to every story, right? And so I kind of appreciated that they kind of showed that. They didn't say which one is the right thing. They just kind of showed like this is what was happening according to the accounts.
Right.
Because to be fair, the account from the prosecution and from others that were not as invested in their defense was that, that this came out of nowhere and that the parents were fine.
Right.
So,
Yeah. They didn't show Eric having difficult emotions in a way that made it seem unjustified. So
Right.
they reflected, I think, reality well in that way. But yeah, they also didn't show Jose and Kitty, but I guess more Jose, the father, as some creepazoid who's obviously evil and is winking at the camera in another sort of way.
Yeah, like they showed the scenes that would have been like the public evidence, sort of. Again, obviously dramatized, but like when he's yelling at them at the tennis court, and obviously anyone that would be watching that would be like, man, what an asshole, right? But that doesn't mean that same person is secretly, brutally violating the son, right?
And they didn't show flashbacks of the boys being sexually abused or anything. So they kept to the facts in that way.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it also because it reflects the ambiguity of these kinds of accounts. Right. That's almost always inherent with these sorts of accounts. And it reflects accurately that abusers like this don't show any signs if you're just a fly in the wall as they're having dinner with their kids or they're at work,
And there was those other interesting scenes where, and actually this was according to their account, so there's some reason to believe that kind of unfolded this way. When they discover that Lyle doesn't have hair, like he's got a hairpiece, and the father switches from he was completely irate about stuff, right, to when the mother rips off the hairpiece, the father switches to concern for his firstborn, and he's like, and it's again shows that dichotomy of like, well, how would it be possible that such a monster? But that's the thing, is like these people are humans with complex.
Yeah, and it also kind of made Lyle into a bit of a pompous jerk face.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, not horribly, but he the way he comes across is a little douchebaggy.
Yeah, and at the same time, you have to consider, like, A, why did he lose the hair in the first place? And B, the pressure of, because you can tell, like, a lot of the father's ego is invested in his sons being perfect, right? So what a bald son at that young age would mean to his ego. Yeah.
Now, what I'll say to anyone who was concerned or something that in the deep dive we didn't go over every single detail, I would say that we would still be talking about it every day if we were going over every detail. There are certain things that we just have to exclude for time.
Right.
And the deep dive took several chapters. So
and what's funny is that if we hadn't, if we hadn't taken so long, if there hadn't been so much content, there's some stuff we wouldn't have gotten to record, which was happening as we were recording, which was the latest judgment about their ability to be eligible for parole.
Yeah. Last email, anonymous patron. She says, if you're doing a follow-up on the parole outcome, I think Dr. Honda would especially appreciate the Two Angry Men podcast episode. The brothers were on the podcast and discussed their current mindset, accountability, and apology, and offered insight into their behavior and perspective. They explained how, despite not expecting to ever be released, they explained how they've undertaken remarkable self-rehabilitation in prison. Like they have created and ran prison programs to support fellow inmates with trauma and meditation. Meditation is what I say. Cool. Inmates with trauma. Anyway, working in hospice care and with the disabled, they've done that. They've earned college degrees, so I guess that gets at if there's employability. They have contributed to California's green space initiatives, and they've run a therapy dog program in prison. They also share their potential post-prison plans, like wanting to continue working with the prison system to support inmates and victims. Interesting fact, Lyle and Eric helped mentor a famous hip-hop artist named X-Rated in prison and assisted him in gaining the possibility of parole and his eventual release. This artist now, in turn, advocates for the brothers' parole, including testifying for them and even writing a song called Sins of the Father in their honor. I listened to the song, and it's a hip-hop song.
Wow. You know what occurs to me is that they are also their father's sons in the good ways, meaning their father was clearly a very intelligent and industrious person. Right. And therefore, it's not too shocking that and reportedly the mother was also very intelligent herself. So it wouldn't be too shocking that the two of them would have the capability to do a lot of good things if they apply themselves. So that's encouraging to hear.
So final word on this final episode of our deep dive on the Menendez Brothers, Brito.
I have remained in my position, which is I ultimately... although not, I can't say, hey, it's great, just go murder someone and break the law. I do still believe that they were traumatized, and I believe that that there were extenuating circumstances to those murders, and so I do believe that they should be eligible for parole. So I'm glad from that perspective, and if they do, it'd be interesting to see if they do positive things with the remainder part of their life. Mm-hmm. That'd be really great.
Maybe they'll come on our podcast.
Yeah, and we could talk about it.
And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because
you deserve it.